don't know when I started fearing sleep, but I do know when I started fearing what came after it. It was one of those nights where everything seemed normal, the kind of night that makes you feel safe in your own home. But sleep, for me, became an invitation for terror, a terror that I couldn't control, couldn't escape, and worst of all, couldn't move away from. It started as a simple feeling, a heaviness in the air. Then it turned into a nightmare that wouldn't end, one that forced me to face something far worse than a mere dream. This isn't just about fear. It's about feeling trapped between two worlds. It's about waking up, but not really waking up. I had just moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. The kind of place you rent when you're trying to start fresh, away from the noise and the chaos of city life. I had been working long hours at a new job, and I was grateful for the quiet nights, where the only sounds were the occasional car passing outside and the steady hum of my refrigerator. It was a Wednesday night. Nothing special. I'd gotten home late from work, thrown on my pajamas, and curled up on the couch with a blanket. The clock read 11:30 p.m. I wasn't particularly tired, but the exhaustion of the day had started to weigh on me. The TV was on in the background, but my mind wasn't really on a show, though. I was vaguely aware of the time, the space around me, and yet that night was different. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the stillness of the night or the cold that crept through the window, but I felt off, that strange feeling in the pit of my stomach that something wasn't quite right, a sense of being watched. But when I turned to look, no one was there. I shrugged it off, closing my eyes for just a second, but the second stretched into minutes, and before I knew it, I had fallen asleep on the couch. I had no idea then that sleep would be the beginning of something much darker. I woke up in the dark. It wasn't the kind of waking up that leaves you refreshed and ready to take on the world. No, I was awake, but I couldn't move, not even a finger. My body felt as if it were made of stone, heavy, paralyzed. My heart pounded in my chest as my eyes darted around the room, desperate to find something to focus on, anything to give me a sense of control. The room was eerily still, the soft glow of moonlight filtering in through the blinds. But something was wrong. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I knew in the very core of my being that I wasn't alone. I tried to scream. Nothing. My mouth was sealed shut, as though someone had placed an invisible hand over it. I tried to wiggle my fingers, to move my legs, anything. Nothing. The air felt thick and oppressive, pressing down on my chest. My breath came in ragged gasps as panic crept in, swallowing my thoughts whole. And then I saw it. In the corner of the room near the door, there was something, a figure, tall, shadowy, and indistinct. Yet I could feel its presence like a weight pressing down on me. It didn't move, but I could feel it watching me, waiting. My mind screamed at me to do something, anything, but my body betrayed me. I could hear the faint sound of my breath, shallow and quick, and then I felt it, the unmistakable sensation of someone sitting on the edge of the couch next to me, but I couldn't move, couldn't even flinch away from it. My eyes were locked on that figure in the corner, and it stayed there still and silent, as though savoring the fear it was feeding off of. The silence was unbearable. Time itself seemed to stretch, each second a never-ending eternity. And just as I thought I might be able to move, just as I thought I might scream, the figure moved. It was slow at first, but then it lunged towards me. Its face, or what I assumed was its face, was completely black. A void where features should have been. I could feel the presence pressing closer and closer like a suffocating weight. I shut my eyes tightly, praying for it to end, but the weight on my chest grew heavier. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It felt like my body was fighting against me, like something was holding me down, unwilling to let me go. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared,
The figure vanished. Gone. No sound. No movement. Just an empty, silent room. I was left alone. But was I really alone? I lay there, unable to process what had just happened. My body still wouldn't respond, and every inch of my being was drenched in sweat, fear clawing at the edges of my consciousness. The feeling of the figure's presence lingered, suffocating me. I wanted to cry out, but my mouth still wouldn't move. I couldn't move.
This wasn't the first time it had happened. Over the following weeks, it returned, each time more intense, more real. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, and the shadow, it seemed to get closer. There were nights when I would wake up in that same terrifying state, but now I could feel it watching me even before I fell asleep. I knew it was out there, waiting for me to fall into that vulnerable state of half-consciousness. One night, I woke up with my heart pounding, but this time there was no shadow. There was something worse. The air in the room was unnaturally cold. I could see my breath. I could feel the presence around me again, but now it was accompanied by something else. A low, guttural whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but they were coming from all around me, closing in on me, drowning out everything else. I fought against the paralysis, but it was as if my body had forgotten how to move. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. I couldn't stand it. And then, suddenly, a hand, cold, damp, and clammy, rested on my shoulder. I tried to scream. I tried to move. I could feel the pressure on my chest, again, the crushing weight of it. And then I heard it, the whisper, clearer this time, but it was not in a language I recognized. "You're mine now," it hissed. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't know what was happening, or if this was even real, but I felt something break inside me. The panic surged like an ocean, and I knew I couldn't survive another moment like this. Every inch of my being screamed to wake up, to move, to do anything, and then it happened. I felt my fingers twitch, a small movement, but it was enough. I clenched my fists, desperate to free myself from the invisible chains that held me down. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, my body began to respond. First my hands, then my arms, and then finally I could move my legs. The weight on my chest began to lift, but the whispers, they didn't stop. They were still there. They were still watching. I shot out of bed, gasping for air, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might burst. I turned on every light in the room, scanning every corner for something, anything. But the room was empty, silent, except for one thing, the cold sweat on my skin, the feeling of eyes on me, the whispering still in my head. Even now, months later, I still don't know what happened that night. Was it just a nightmare, or was it something worse? Something that follows you back from the edge of sleep, creeping into the real world. I haven't had sleep paralysis since, but the fear lingers. Every time I close my eyes, I wonder if I'll wake up again, but this time for good. And sometimes, when the room is too quiet, I can still hear it, the whispers, the thing watching me. But I have to wonder, is it in my mind, or is it waiting for me to fall asleep again? If you've ever experienced something like this, or if you're curious about other terrifying true stories like mine, be sure to check out my other horror videos right here. There's so much more to uncover, and trust me, what you'll hear next will make you question the safety of your own bed. Click here to explore more chilling accounts from the deepest corners of the human experience.